Hi, second grade. Good morning. Today we are going to practice measuring with inches, feet, and yards again, and then we are going to also practice making estimates or smart guesses about how long objects around our house are. So I first want to start off by reviewing the different types of measurements. Okay, so this is 1 inch. 1 inch is about the same size as a small paper clip, or about the size of half of the small side of a credit card or driver's license. So this should be pretty familiar to you guys because you have been measuring with inches for the past couple of days. We measure with inches when we are measuring shorter items. So if it's not more than about 2 rulers, we always want to measure with inches. So something I thought of was a spoon. A spoon is about 6 or 7 inches. A shoe is probably around 12 inches, maybe a little bit less for you guys. And a key is probably around 2 inches. So those are just some common items I might measure using inches. We can use 2 different tools to measure inches. So we can use a ruler to measure inches or a yardstick. We use a ruler when the item is less than 12 inches long. So think about how big a ruler is. And if the thing you're measuring is shorter than that ruler, you're going to be using the ruler to measure it. So a crayon is shorter than a ruler. So if you measure a crayon, it's about 6 inches. An eraser is smaller than a ruler. So if I look at the eraser, it was about 3 inches. I can use a yardstick if the item is more than a ruler long. But remember here, I'm still measuring with inches. Just because I use a yardstick does not mean that I'm going to say yards. I will still say inches. So if I was measuring the length of my arm, I would use a yardstick, but I would look how many inches my arm is on that yardstick. So this person's arm is about 15 inches. I'm thinking about a snake. Most snakes are pretty long. If I straightened out a steak and put it against a yardstick, it's about 24 inches all the way up to the tongue. So those are some things I might measure using a yardstick. All right, so that's inches. Anything that's smaller than about 2 rulers, we only want to measure using inches, or if it's really small, we can use centimeters, but today we're just going to be talking about those inches. When items are bigger, we use feet. 1 foot is the size of 1 ruler. There are 12 inches in 1 foot. Some common things that are 1 foot long or 12 inches are a Subway sandwich. It's about, if you get a full-size one, it's about 12 inches long or the size of 1 ruler. And the length of a notebook. So from the top to the bottom of a notebook is also about the length of a ruler, so about 1 foot. So when I'm measuring these objects, I can say they are 1 foot long. So what tools can we use to measure feet? So we can use a ruler if we want to keep just moving it over and over again. Each ruler equals 1 foot. We can use a yardstick. If we're using a yardstick, there's 36 inches in here, so there are 3 feet in a yardstick. Also, you may see some people using a measuring tape. Measuring tapes vary, so they don't always have the same amount of feet, but they usually have at least 3 feet, sometimes up to like 10 feet. So it's always important to remember a ruler is 1 foot and a yardstick is 3 feet. In every yardstick, there are 3 rulers or 3 feet. So what are some things we use to measure? What are some things we measure using feet? If the item is more than 2 feet long, so more than 2 rulers, but it's like less than 6 rulers, we're going to want to use feet. Because if it's 6 feet, that's 2 yards, so we're going to start wanting to use yards then. So anything that's about a person size, you might want to use feet to measure. So we definitely always measure how tall someone is using feet. So I put a picture of a girl being measured by her parents. She is 4 feet and 2 inches tall. There are definitely other things that we can use measuring feet, like household items. I think furniture is an important one to use measuring feet. But I'll show you that in a little bit longer. Okay, the next thing we are going to be talking about is yards. So a yard, I've already talked about this a little bit, but a yard is 3 feet long. So some common things that are about 1 yard are the length of a guitar, The length from the handle of the door down to the floor is about 1 yard or 3 feet. And if you take a bed, about half of the bed is about 1 yard. Typically, the tool we use to measure yards is a yardstick. When we see people playing football, a football field is 100 yards or 100 yardsticks. If I was going to measure a car, it's about 4 yards. If I'm talking about the length of a city block or a neighborhood block, that's about 80 yards. So when the item is more than 6 feet, so think of a really tall man. If it's more than that, we're probably going to want to measure it using yards. So now let's practice. We're going to be making estimates. When we estimate, we use what we know about inches, feet, and yards to make a smart guess about something's length. So we know one small paperclip is about 1 inch. That's our inch benchmark. We know one notebook is about 1 foot, or 12 small paper clips, 12 inches. So 1 foot is the same as 12 inches. I also can think of about the length of one ruler or the length of a notebook. That's your benchmark for 1 foot. And then when I'm thinking about measuring yards, I know that 1 yard is the length from the handle of the door down to the bottom of the ground. So we're going to keep those 3 things in mind when we're measuring. Let's start by talking about inches. So, if the length of 1 inch is about the size of a small paper clip, when I'm thinking about the size of my pen, I'm thinking it is about 5 inches. Now that's an estimate or a smart guess. I haven't actually measured my pen yet. So now I want to measure it. If I'm measuring a pen, should I use a ruler or a yardstick? Think about it. I'm going to use a ruler because I don't think my pen is over 12 inches long. Let's try it. Using my 10-inch ruler that I created, this is a little bit shorter than 1 foot because I was doing it on a regular piece of paper, which is smaller than 1 foot. But I still think I should be okay to measure my ruler because I don't think it's longer than 10 inches. So I'm going to put it at the very top. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's about a little more than 5.5, so I'm going to go up to 6. My pen is about 6 inches long. So my estimate of 5 inches was really close, and I was able to make such a close estimate because I know what the length of one paperclip is, and that helps me figure out how long I think that my pen would be. Let's try it again with something else. Now, let's estimate something else. Remember that the length, that 1 inch is about the size of a paperclip. So now I want to think about how long my arm is. So I'm thinking about from my shoulder to my wrist. I think that would be about 20 paper clips or 20 inches, but let's measure it now to check. Should I use a ruler or a yardstick? I think I'm going to use a yardstick for this one because the length of my arm from my shoulder to my wrist is longer than one ruler. Remember, I'm still measuring with inches, but I'm going to use a yardstick because it has more than 12 inches, and I think my arm is 20 inches. Let's try it out. Okay, so now I'm going to now I'm going to measure the length of my arm. Remember, my estimation was 20 inches. I'm using my yardstick that I created yesterday that has 36 inches on it. Okay, so I'm going to put the 0 up at the top and hold it all the way down from my shoulder to my wrist. 21 inches. So my estimation of 20 inches was really close, and I was able to do that because I know how long 1 inch is. Now, even though I used my yardstick to measure, I still say inches because inside the yardstick, remember, is 36 inches. My arm isn't 21 yards. That would be 21 yardsticks. So remember that when we're measuring with a yardstick, if we're talking about the inches inside of it, we still say inches. Okay. Now let's estimate the length of a notebook. The length of my table. I'm thinking about my notebook. One notebook is about 1 foot, and one ruler is also about 1 foot. So when I'm looking at my table, I'm thinking about how many notebooks I could fit across my table. I think I could fit about 4 notebooks across my table, so I estimate the length of my table is about 4 feet. Let's measure it now to find out. So I'm measuring with a 12-inch ruler this time. If you only have your 10 centimeter Ruler, that's okay too for measuring with feet today. Just add maybe like a tiny bit little extra to the edge each time you do it. Okay, so let's try it out. Each ruler is 1 foot. So I'm going to start at the edge. That's 1 foot. I'm going to mark my spot. 2 feet, mark my spot. Slide it down. 3 feet, mark my spot. 4 feet. Awesome. My estimation was correct. The length of my table is 4 feet, and I was able to figure that out because I know about how long a ruler is or about how long a notebook is. Okay, last estimate. This time we're going to estimate using yards. So if the floor to the door handle is about 1 yard, I estimate that the length of my refrigerator is about 2 yards because I think my refrigerator is about the same size as the door. So now we're going to measure it using a yardstick. So I've got my yardstick we created yesterday. I'm going to start at the top at 0. All right, so that's about 1 yard right to here. So now I'm going to hold that spot at the bottom and bring my yardstick down. It's not a full 2 yards. There was about this much left at the end. So I'm going to say that this refrigerator is about 1.5 yards. Now, 1 yard is this whole yardstick. So we need to remember that. We use yards when we're measuring something larger, like a refrigerator, or maybe a couch, or a car, or the length of a football field. So today, you guys are going to get to first make estimations. So that's smart guesses using those things you know, using a paper clip, the size of a notebook, the length from the handle of the door down to the floor. You're going to first estimate how long things are and write down what you think, just like I did. Then you'll take out your ruler or your 10-inch ruler, your yardstick, and you'll actually measure those things to see if your estimations were correct. Remember, it's okay to not be perfect, so don't just write the same thing you estimated. Make sure that you're being really careful with measuring to find out exactly how long each object is. Have fun.